Hey guys and gals, Malkuth1974 back at you with another episode of our Kerbal Space Program Apollo series. Today we're going to be covering Apollo 10, the lunar orbit and return only. The Apollo 10 mission was a complete staging of the Apollo 11 mission without actually landing on the moon. Now, why did I add all these weird missions without actually landing or doing like Apollo 7, 9, and 10? Well, the purpose of these missions is to get your Apollo vessel ready for actual mission and make sure everything works. Most of the time we just try to do it anyway, but this is how NASA does it. So I figured why not try it this way. So let's take a look at our new Apollo craft. Not much has changed, but you can tell I'm going to skip the whole building it and all that stuff this episode. We've extended the engines, we've added the new lunar module engines to it, and we extended the second stage just a little bit to give it a little extra fuel. So you can tell our Delta V is 7,718, which is plenty for us to actually get to the moon. It doesn't give us everything, but it should work. So let's launch this baby and go. Alright, so I have to do a nighttime launch of this of the Apollo because of where Kerbin is and where the moon is. We're doing a straight launch to the moon like I usually do in some of my older series, which is going to give us a little bit of an issue with one of the objectives of this, which is which is orbit Kerbin. When you do a moon approach the way I'm about to do it, you never actually orbit Kerbin when you take off. It's kind of funny. You'll notice it when you'll see that a Kerbin objective is not done, but we will finish that on the way back. I can kind of cheat the system a little bit to get that to work correctly. You know, this is all the standard stuff. I have this really sped up and everything. This mission, the Apollo 10 mission, was the second to orbit the moon and the first to travel to the moon with the entire Apollo spacecraft configuration. The astronauts Thomas Stafford and Eugene Cernan descended inside the lunar module within 14 kilometers of the lunar surface, achieving the closest approach to the moon before Apollo 11 landed 2 months later. So if you can actually imagine how they were launching these missions in 1969, they were all, only a few months apart. So could you imagine, like today you take NASA and how it's handling its newest pod, and we're talking years, like 4-year spans between missions to get things working. And the Apollo was just an amazing time if you think of how space travel was. And of course, right now we are just setting up to get to the moon and get into within a good thing. I kind of used what I'm doing here is I'm actually letting the second stage crash into the moon. That's what you just saw me set up, and now we've separated everything, and now we need to actually do just like we did our practice run. We know how to do it because I did it the last time when we were just doing this over Earth, but for right now we're doing the practice on the way to the moon. I do have RCS now on this thing, so we did upgrade all that stuff, so we don't have to worry about that. Doing the push away and getting everything locked into place should be pretty awesome. Alright, so the actual Apollo 10 crew was the lunar module pilot was Eugene E. Cernan, the commander was Thomas P. Stafford, and the command module pilot was John W. Young. So if anybody wants to know that information. If you want to know, the lunar module was called Snoopy, and the command and service module was called Charlie Brown. And I believe that these guys were almost, this is how professional they are, were almost, since they were so close to the moon, almost decided to land it. But of course, in NASA, you have to be very professional. You can't do things that you're not really set up to do. They were not really set up to land and do any type of science. So it's just one of those situations. In this situation, what I'm going to do is we're going to separate the lunar module, and we're going to actually descend to about 13 kilometers. And actually, I think I go to 13 meters, which is a little bit, a little bit closer than the actual Apollo did. But What I want to do is I want to test out to make sure that the second stage of the lunar module actually does land, actually does separate, and we can make it and rendezvous with the command module fine. And as we can see, our pilots are Bob Kerman, Adamine Kerman, and Margard Kerman. Adamine Kerman is the main test pilot of all this. He's the highest ranking test pilot in here. And then of course we got Bob Kerman, who is the scientist. And Margard Kerman is, I believe, an engineer. I don't remember. I wish they had little icons to show what these guys did. Maybe they'll add that for the newest thing. I'm just updating all of my Kerbal Engineer stuff right now because, yeah, it was annoying. I finally got around to doing it, and we'll start a descent on probably the main crater, which most everybody always aims for. But of course, we're not going to be landing. We're just going to come within 13 kilometers and separate everything. So we need to transfer all of our guys into the lunar module. Of course, we need to bring a pilot, and I believe I'm going to bring Bob. I can't really remember. Remember, this is all post-production, recording, voice recording. Yeah, it's Bob. So main pilot and Bob, scientist and the pilot. There we go. Just separating everything, setting everything up, and getting everything moving. Now, if you look at the actual contracts, you can see what I'm talking about, that the enter orbit around Gold Kerbin is not green. That's because we never actually orbited Kerbin. We basically orbited the moon first. Because it's how the orbit, it's all the programming, how if your AP and your PE are not directly around Kerbin, then it doesn't count as an orbit in programming language, I guess we can say that. So technically, when we went right to the moon, we were still way too low for a PE on Kerbin to actually count as a orbit. So that's why that never really went. And here we go. We are actually coming down, setting everything up, practicing what I have. You know, I'm also making sure that I'm going to have enough energy to actually land this vessel. And I believe that the first stage of this orbiter had 1200 delta V, which is plenty because all you really need is about 500 to actually land on the moon. But I kind of do what's called a slow burn. I don't do suicide burns. I know that's a pretty popular thing to do now, is the suicide burns. But I do like the slow burn, where I keep the throttle at about, you know, not even 10%, just to let it bleed off some of the energy slowly before I go down. And there we go. We just separated. We got down to, yeah, actually we were about down to 14, weren't we? And now I got to bring it back up and re-rendezvous with the actual orbiter. Now I'm also paying attention to what I have for delta V here, and we can also still tell that I still have quite a lot. So it does seem that this lander will do fine with taking off and coming back from the moon in Kerbal Space Program. It might be a little dicey if I make a mistake with the rendezvous, so we'll have to always make sure that we're okay with that. But of course, we still have the actual orbiter that could technically catch up with our vessel if it needed to actually catch up. But we can see that my current delta V is still 1200, and I'm already orbiting Kerbin. And we still have to figure out that we only started from 13, so we'll probably have like 800 or 600 left in a regular mission when we do Apollo 11. And we should be all set. I'm also a little bit too high. I think I have the command module at 13K, and I think I did that on purpose because I was simulating what it'd be to go from a landed moon to the command module. So when I actually do Apollo 11, I'm going to bring the command module probably down to around 50,000 meters. Right now I'm about 70, so it should all, you know, come out fine in the end if we work it right. So all we're doing right here is rendezvousing, again. We can see we're pretty close now. I think we're about 2 kilometers away, 2.5. Yep. So there's the Apollo C with the LEM. And I kind of overpass it. Sometimes I do that with when I use the time acceleration, but that's fine. We only did it about 100 meters away. It wasn't too big of a deal. And this thing handles like a dream too, by the way. All it is a box. So you know, a round little thing. It has RCS on it. It's all set up. I'm just positioning the command module for we don't have to do too much stuff. The command module, unfortunately, in that situation, doesn't have a good pilot, so he couldn't figure out how to do anything. There we go. Sorry, I had to do my alarm clock there. It was going off. I don't know why that stupid thing always goes off all the time. Alright, so, because somebody said it that way, of course. So there we go. We transferred all the pilots back to the command module, and then we dropped the LEM. One thing I did notice in this mission that I need to add a CPU or a command block to the LEM where I can control it without any pilots being on it. That way we can deorbit it on the moon and crash it. So here we go. This is where I get my orbit for Kerbin. I cheated a little bit. Usually I would do a complete burn to Kerbin with that, but I decided to go this way. And if we look at the command module, I still have tons of Delta V, but it is a little bit tight. It's you know, we're getting down to, where are we getting? Let's see how much we have left when we finally get to there we go. So we have about 423. So I guess technically that is plenty of error to work with in case we have to do anything, you know, like an emergency interception on the LEM and the moon or anything like that. So everything seems to be fine with this vessel. It seems to work the way I intend it to work, and you know, we'll go from there when Apollo 11 comes back. So I'm gonna definitely try to add some type of command module to automated command module to the LEM or the landing thing, if I can remember to do that by the next time I actually do Apollo 11. I haven't actually recorded that yet. We can see that my part of my command vessel is exploding over there in the distance because it's being burnt up. Now, it's kind of exciting that Kerbal Space Program for 1.1 is going to have its own heating system and atmospheric system, so hopefully we won't have to use mods anymore to enjoy that aspect of Kerbal Space Program. And as you can tell, on this landing I am nowhere near the Space Center. Apollo 11 I'll try to hit it in Apollo 11. We'll see how well that goes. That's a whole that's a whole huge calculation thing that you got to do, and I'm not very good at calculating, so I'm good at guessing. So we'll guess on Apollo 11 if we can get this close to the Space Center or not. And there we go. Everything went right. All the parachutes are out. Bob Kerman, Adamine Kerbin, Marjorie Kerbin are coming home after a successful Apollo 10 mission. And our next mission will be Apollo 11. We'll bring out the star, Jebediah. Jebediah will come out, and he'll be the first man on the moon. Well, technically he won't be in this playthrough. I've had tons of people on the moon, but we won't get into that. So as always, guys, it's Malkuth1974. Subscribe, comment, rate. See you later.